Today on Energy Contact, we like to think that we have one brain up here in our heads that decides and operates everything. That it is the mind, it's the all-powerful monarch over us. But we're learning today that that's not so. Our brain and nervous system are quite different than our mind. Our self, our entire self, is an interdependent network, and it's all operating with no one in charge. Want to know more? Well, make up your mind to focus your network right here, because it's coming up right now on Energy Contact. Hello, and welcome to Energy Contact. My name is Joseph Willenbrink. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to the production staff here in the studio for helping me get my message out to you. Energy Contact is a series that I'm presenting to you as a public service. It's about attaining perfect health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and realizing your full potential. It is designed to present you a new way of seeing yourself and seeing the world around you. We're talking about things that have to do with making an energetic contact with yourself internally and with your environment. There's no difference between the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotion, the intellect, the ego. There's no difference between mass and energy. Goodness, we love to classify and categorize, but there's just no difference. And so all that health and self-improvement take place at the interface, where we bring that energy into contact with our physical self. We're presenting on these programs a brand new paradigm that's thousands of years old. We're presenting extraordinary topics for ordinary people. And let's move right ahead with that and bring up our first slide. Everyone please know that I am not a doctor, and this show is not at all a medical advice show. If you're looking for medical advice, go see a doctor. That's not what we're doing here. I might call myself an energy healer or a chakra healer, so might you, but it's important to know that state, federal, and local governments absolutely do not. There's important information on this slide. We're going to leave it up for a few more seconds, and I hope you will read it with awareness. And after you've got it down, if you would, please locate a pencil and paper. Here's why. At the end of the show, we're going to run some credits, and there's going to be contact information for me on those credits. I invite you to contact me. I hope you will. But in order to do so, you're going to need that information. Now, there'll be plenty of time to read it and write it down. There's just not going to be time to start the search for your pencil and paper. So if you would, please locate that now. Thanks. All right, let's come back here. Today's show is show number 34. If you're tuning in for the first time, thank you. Thanks and welcome. I think you'll enjoy the show. These shows are sequential, so they do build. And if you're joining in for the first time, there's some ramp-up stuff, some up-to-speed stuff that you will have missed out on. However, I'm doing my very best to make these shows have a lot of value on a standalone basis. And I think you will get a lot out of this show just by itself. However, if it is your first time or one of your first times, and if what you see piques your interest, I hope that you will look for earlier shows. They will be airing at later times, either here in this cable area or perhaps in the different cable networks of your friends. If you look for them, I'll appreciate it. And now it's the time of the show where I introduce the brains of this outfit. It's with great pleasure that I introduce to you my co-host, Slim. Since we're investigating what energy contacts in the physical self, we have to understand a few things, don't we? This show is about energy, and we certainly want to understand energy. But energy in itself does us no good. It doesn't do us any good until we get it from out there somewhere into here, into where it contacts us. Slim is here to help us understand what that thing is that the energy contacts. Remember, a body without energy is just a corpse. An energy without a body, it might be a number of cool things, but it's not human. All right, let's move along. Plenty to do today. Previously on Energy Contact, we have discussed the body intellect. We've talked about how the same materials in our brains that give us thought, reason, recall, memory, logic, all of these things that we think of as brain functions, we've seen how they are in fact in every cell of our body. We've seen how that body intellect builds us, how thought builds anatomy. We have spoken episodes ago about the internal forces, all those unseen internal forces that animate us, and the external forces that act upon us. We've seen that we have two brains, that we have a completely separate, completely independent brain down in our guts, in our core. And we've seen that we have a parallel nervous system too. We're classically taught that the nervous system is a brain function, and the nervous system, as classically taught, pretty much is. But none of these new brains and old brains and new nervous systems and old nervous systems we've been talking about, none of them are the mind per se. Also, another point about these extra brains and stuff is they've been there for millennia. They've been there since long before we were human beings, since before we were even vertebrates. But the best scientific minds didn't know anything about them until the early 1970s. Old yogis and old mystics knew about them centuries ago. And they also knew about this mysterious energy that we've been talking about called Kundalini energy. All right, today we want to be able to integrate some of this information we've been looking at so that we can see a big picture. Why do we care? Why should we even care about this independent brain and this independent nervous system? It hasn't been big news. A lot of people don't care about it. What does it all have to do with understanding the mind? And what does it have to do with the body intellect, for that matter? With the internal forces that animate us? What does it have to do with understanding the difference between the real and the unreal? How can this knowledge help explain the fact that 1 million people with exactly identical atoms build themselves in 1 million different ways? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, every way. We want to understand a little more about the brain, the nervous system, and the mind. What they have to do with you, what they have to do with each other, and what they have to do with how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And ultimately, what they have to do with your health and growth and self-improvement. So we're moving into a new understanding, moving from a brain and a hardwired electrical nervous system to a unified network field system, where it will be even more obvious to you that there's absolutely no difference between your body, your mind, your spirit, emotion, mass, energy, everything. That will eventually lead us back to the concept of Kundalini energy. All right, lofty goals and much to do. But first, before we move on, it's time to take a deep breath. Sit back and relax, because now is the part of the show where we are going to take our virtual field trip, a journey in our mind's eye. And today, we are going digital. We're going to bring your house into the 21st century. And so let's begin. Let's start with your computer modem, with your broadband modem. What we're going to do is we're going to take out all the hard wires and such, and we're going to put in a wireless modem. And then we'll give you a laptop computer that doesn't have to be plugged in. You just get online from anywhere in your house. And right about now you're thinking, oh ho hum. That's not new, that's old stuff. You see it all over town. Many of you have that in place already. All right, fair enough, but we're moving on from there. Next, we're going to go into your walls. And we're going to change out the wiring so that you don't need wall plugs and you don't need cords and cables anymore. Not to anything. All your lights, appliances, stereo, all that stuff is operating without wires, just like your computer is. Okay, now we're starting to get cool, but we're still going on from there. Now, imagine that those appliances begin communicating with each other and with yourself and with that power source. Somehow, They know when they need more energy, when they need less energy, when they need to go on standby, etc. And they conduct themselves accordingly. All right, now we've gotten somewhere. Now your house is no longer analog, it's digital. Hold that thought. All right, for years, most people have thought of your brain and its extension, your central nervous system, as the whole thing, the whole enchilada, the entire shooting match, a strongly centralized, hardwired, brain-dominated system that controls everything from up top, from the top down. In the early 20th century, though, we started to revise our thinking. And we started to revise our thinking not because we discovered anything new, but because all of a sudden we started looking around and the model just didn't fit anymore. So we began to search, to grope around in the dark for something that would describe reality more clearly. What we observed is that unseen things within us somehow held our thoughts and actions back and let them go, like opening and shutting a gate. And so emotions and certain nervous system triggers were sort of held behind locked doors. And only very specific molecular things could unlock them. So there we were, a new model now. Billions and billions of locks and keys. That was an improvement. It was a better model. But even so, when you were in school, they taught you the first one, the previous one. That's what they taught your doctor too, at least until pretty late in med school. All right, but smart people soon realized that even this newer, better model was still inadequate. It was an obsolete model of what was really going on. And so they looked further because they realized we'd never be able to understand this complex set of experiences and actions and thoughts and feelings that go on in us this way. And so time went on, and ultimately we're learning now, just now, that we are not a mechanical sequence of wires at all. We're not outlets and extension cords. We are a simultaneous wireless network of activities. And we're operating with no one and nothing in charge. How do we get to there? Well, that's where we're going today. But first, let's go back and look at the classical system. Let's bring up a slide. Here's a picture coming up of our brain and our spinal cord. Recall that we discussed previously that the spinal cord really is just a part of the brain, that there's no distinction. You can see there over on the right side of that picture that there's really no place where the brain stops and the spinal cord begins. Which is precisely why when we talk about neurology, we're talking about both the brain and the spinal cord. We're led to believe that the mind is a part of this. But where is it? Where's the mind in that picture? That spinal cord is operating a lot of brain functions. It's what we've come to know as the central nervous system, motor systems and sensory systems. But where's the mind? Well, let's move on to a next slide. Here you're going to see a slide of the autonomic nervous system. There it is. This is still the classic system. But look at this thing. It's a wiring diagram. Quite literally is what it is. It shows what plugs into what. It even has cords. This is a slide of the autonomic nervous system from a recent, as in late 90s, collegiate textbook. Now, we're not going to explain the autonomic nervous system today, but for the sake of time, you can sort of think of autonomic, meaning automatic. These are the things that your body sort of does automatically. And so all of the brain functions that operate body systems operate from that part of us, that part of the brain we call the spinal cord. And the nervous system operates from that part of the brain we call the spinal cord. All right, let's move forward to still another slide. Here we are again, still the classical system. On the left, we have a picture of a neuron, a nerve cell, complete with its axons and dendrites. And there on the right is a picture of that classical synapse that some of you learned about in school, sending things called neurotransmitters across the synaptic cleft. All of these things are pictures of the classic model. They're everything we knew until 1970 or so. Let's come back up here. And all those things are just sort of analog blueprints, huh? They're schematics. People studied them like wiring diagrams. And you know what? They still do, to this very day. But there's no mind in there. There's no mind in any of those systems, at least not in the context in which people are searching. And while that classic model is totally accurate, it's vastly incomplete. It's outdated because it is only describing about 5% of what's going on. In other words, we had no clue about 95% of what was going on in us neurologically until the 1970s. This includes all the surgeons who were cutting you open and fiddling about and putting things in and taking things out. All of the doctors who were prescribing you chemicals to change the system, they only understood 5% of the system. And it also explains our confusion about what's the brain and what's the mind. All right, it was in the 1970s that smart scientists started making breakthroughs with all this. Let's look at some new pictures. We'll bring up another picture, and you'll see the other 95% of reality. That's a picture of a ligand receptor model. It's not a mechanical model at all. Cause and effect as we know it are not visible here. This is a network. That ribbon-looking thing is a representation of a receptor. Just a protein. And that bubbly thing in there, that is a ligand, a so-called neuropeptide. It's just a little small protein. These are just molecules. But maybe, just maybe, there's a mind in there somewhere. The interaction between the ligand and receptor account for the motor and sensory systems for sure. But there is so much more going on in there than all that. All right, let's come back up here. These ligand and receptor models change us continuously. They make us move, act, react, think, everything. And more importantly, perhaps, they make us feel. In every sense of the word. All of this is going on at the rate of millions of reactions per second from the bottom of our feet to the top of our head every moment of every day. Does it seem a little esoteric? Well, not really. Those receptors are just molecules. They're just mass. They're big specialized proteins. And as we move and breathe and pump blood, energy moves through them. But we're not used to thinking of molecules of mass and energy relating this way, even though Einstein told us they were the same thing, and he told us that over 100 years ago. These receptors, they're just sensors. They're sense organs. They're receivers of information. Just like your ears are designed to detect and discern sounds, and your nose is designed to detect and discern smells. These receptors are designed to recognize and attract a certain type of experience. And that experience comes in the form of ligands. Let's bring up another slide. And this is just another picture of the ligand receptor model. When you look at this picture, you can sort of get that lock and key feel from it. And there are billions and billions of these keys. And the interactions that are going on in these billions of things, that's everything. It's where the action is. A prime example of all this is endorphins. Endorphins, your body's natural morphine. It's not a bad characterization to call it that. Endorphins are ligands. They're similar to that little lattice work thing in that picture. And really all they are is just little chains of amino acids. That's all, just the same amino acids that you drink in your protein shake. It's all the buzz today. Everybody's talking about endorphins, but the word wasn't even coined until 1973 or so. And so, the endorphin lands on a receptor, in this case an opiate receptor, which is just a protein. It's also in your protein shake, and that combination causes a feeling. And remember that the endorphins and receptors, this is just one of a multitude of ligand and receptor activities. All right, let's come back here. Recall that I mentioned that each receptor is designed to attract a certain type of experience. I purposely didn't say to attract a certain type of molecule. And there's a reason for that, because there's no difference. As we get into this system, there's absolutely no difference. All right, so what? So what does it all mean? What does it have to do with you, with your health and with your growth and with your self-improvement? So what? Well, it means that all of our cells are intelligent, independent entities, all on their own. Every single one of them. Our brain is not isolated up here. Our mind is not at all isolated up here. Not at all. It's all pervasive. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. Not only that, but it means that our body and everywhere, every cell in it is our mind. That's what our mind is. And wait a minute, if our body is our mind, then those ligands and receptors, well, they must be our subconscious minds. Fascinating. All of the things that make us think the way we think and act the way we act, and more importantly, feel the way we feel, they're all just a part of the experiences and the chemicals that are floating around in every cell of our body. Our mind and our feelings, they're molecules. They're proteins, neuropeptides. They are the internal forces that animate us. You see, we haven't understood the mind at all. And I dare not even bring up the S word, the soul. These words scare scientists to death. They don't talk about them. They don't use them. And yet, these things are physiological things that are completely scientific. All right, so I mentioned the internal forces that animate us. What are these internal forces? Well, they are the unseen things that make us different than a corpse. Our bodies in themselves are identical to a corpse. So what is it that changes it? Well, it's the unseen forces. It's breath, it's heartbeat, it's that frequency and pulse and rhythm and vibration that courses through us every moment of every day. Lungs that go in and out. A heart that goes ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. A colon that shimmies and undulates and moves food through. All of these things are invisible forces. Try to draw a picture of them. You can't. Any more than you can draw a picture of a radio wave. Or any more than you can draw a picture of peace or love or goodness or kindness. But all of these unseen things are real. They're digital. So therefore, breath is life, motion is life. Or at the very least, the absence of these things, the absence of breath and motion, would be how we define death. And all of these internal forces, they're all acted upon by gravity, by entropy, and by energy. The kisses and hugs, the bumps and the bruises, the knocks and the blows from the outside world in. Energy falling up, gravity falling down, entropy falling apart. All these external forces moving all around us. All these forces together shape the way that the ligands are built and how they're combined and circulated and where they're going. It's always been this way. We just weren't aware of it. And where there's no awareness, there's no control. And when there's no control, we end up getting sick. And we don't know why we're sick or what to do about it. Why? Because there's no awareness. We'll explain more of this for next show. But right now, let's get back to the wiring in your house. Those wires in your house, once upon a time, they were a step into the future. There's other examples that I could bring up that aren't in your house. Things like the railroad, to the transatlantic cable, to the telegraph. These were great technological improvements in their time. But now they're sort of obsolete, and those that aren't are getting there. We got our current understanding of our bodies way back in the days of the Industrial Revolution. And that 17th century model, you know what? It was a far cry better than what they thought back in the Dark Ages and the days of the bubonic plague and stuff. But now, welcome to the 21st century. We have to put away old models and bring up new ones. We've been in a digital world for a long time now, and we're still thinking of our body as this huge wiring harness. Science and technology have moved on, and now it's time to move our colloquial view of our body on as well. All right, so much for theory. What does this have to do with you in your everyday life? Well, let's make a tangible example. You're driving and somebody cuts you off. All of a sudden you have a choice. You can get angry, which causes the increase of angry ligands. And remember, ligands are your subconscious mind. And so those angry ligands, now they're all over the place, and they're landing on angry receptors. But they're just molecules, and molecules are what we're made up of. And so that shapes your physical anatomy. Let's take two. That person cuts you off, and you can choose to keep yourself holy. And I'm using the provocative word holy on purpose for right now. But that propagation of holy ligands then that happens, it causes all of those things to increase and land on holy receptors. And that builds you more holy and shapes your physical anatomy accordingly. All right, those are two choices. There's also sad ligands and hurt ones. There's predator ligands and victim ones. Choose any of these or any one of a million other choices, and you will build your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self accordingly. In the unaware mind, there's that word mind, these are all choices. Anger, sadness, happiness, they're choices. They're unaware choices, unconscious choices, but they're choices nonetheless. They're like a bonbon. We know before we eat it, it's got really no value to the body, but we just eat it because it feels good to do it. But after a while, we get conditioned and we lose our free will. So there you are in traffic. Do you enjoy that anger? Well, good. Enjoy it a lot. It's a self-indulgence, but one day somebody cuts you off and you find that you don't have the choice anymore. And then you find yourself saying things after you get angry like, "Oh, I just can't help it. That makes me so mad." Really? You can't help it? And you've got a free will? How does that happen? Maybe it's happening now. To stop it and to make yourself healthy, you have to see yourself in new ways, and you have to do new things. And that's about all the time we have for today. Next show, we'll take this up even further. But for now, I wish you peace and positive energy and a healthy life in Energy Contact.